Lovely. I think we're live. So welcome everyone. Good afternoon indeed. So welcome to another Consumer Duty Practitioners Forum webinar. You need to put your teeth in for that. Today's session is going to be focusing on how businesses can approach social media with confidence, which is a timely topic given the FCA has been quite actively discussing this in the news at the moment, both in terms of kind of illegal influencers, but also the role that regulated businesses can play in countering some of the miscommunications that can occasionally come from over the other side of the regulatory perimeter. So my name is Michael Lawrence. I'm your host today. Who am I? I'm consulting lead at Authorised. We're a specialist financial services regulatory consultancy, but I'm not here in that capacity today. I'm here as the chair of the Practitioners Forum. For those that might be new to the forum, a very quick reminder of what it is. So it aims to give members of the Consumer Duty Alliance practical support through the sharing of experiences, good practice, and kind of driving meaningful discussions on the topics that matter and those that have a tangible impact on businesses and, I suppose most importantly, given that we're the Consumer Duty Alliance, the consumers and clients that they serve. So in today's session, we're going to be exploring how advisors can use social media and more confidently, compliantly and effectively within a regulated environment. And the aim is to kind of demystify some of the rules in this space and give you all some practical tips that you can apply, whether you do or don't have dedicated marketing support within your businesses. It's not just going to be me doing the talking. In fact, I hope to actually say very little in this session, and you might say thankfully for a change, because today I'm delighted to be joined by two excellent speakers in this area, Chris Mars and Claire Mellon. Howdy doody, Chris and Claire.
Morning. Sorry, afternoon.
Yeah.
Over already.
I need to give you some preamble, don't I? Let's start with Chris. So Chris joined SM Advice as Managing Director last year, following 8 years at the Open Work Partnership. Chris has a 25-year career in financial services. He barely look old enough, Chris, man and boy, obviously. And from that, he brings deep expertise across wealth management, later life lending, protection and mortgages. And Chris is particularly passionate about making financial services marketing more engaging and accessible, and particularly, safe doesn't need to be boring. So we're going to be testing you on that today. Welcome, Chris. And second, but no problem. And second, but by no means least, we're joined by Claire. Claire, lovely to see you.
Thank you.
Claire is co-founder and chief client officer at Cohesion Financial Solutions, put my teeth in, and brings over 25 years of experience across financial services, marketing, client experience and strategy. Claire specializes in how firms communicate with clients, with a focus on how doing that in a way that builds trust, improves understanding and drives better outcomes. And her work focuses on simplifying complexity, making financial conversations more accessible, and helping people feel confident engaging with advice, which is obviously a good thing. Thank you.
Thank you.
So before we kick into the session proper, I thought I'd briefly cover what we're going to be focusing on. So initially, we're going to be handing over to Chris, who's going to be giving an overview of the key considerations for businesses looking to use social media to interact with both prospective and their existing clients. As we go, Claire will be sharing her perspectives as a practitioner and how she oversees the use of social media within her role at Cohesion Financial Solutions. Just because I'm a chatterbox, I'll no doubt throw in the odd question or two to Chris and Claire as we go. And there will be time, we always like these sessions to be interactive, to take your questions. So if you add them into the comment section as we go, we'll try and get to them during the session if there's a kind of natural opportunity for it. And if we don't, we'll have a Q&A session at the end where we'll look to bring those together. So hopefully that's all good. And in which case, the end of me giving the preamble, I hand it over to you, Chris, to take us through the key things that firms need to be thinking of in this space. Over to you.
Thanks, Michael. Great to be here. Thanks everyone for joining. It's really good to have the chance to talk to you all about something that's really important to me, and that is the power of social media, and particularly in 2026. Hopefully, we can get you walking away feeling a little bit more confident on using it within your business, and we'll go through the agenda and the learning objectives in a bit. Wonderful introduction, Michael. Thanks for that. So I won't kind of embellish that anymore. Just a little bit about SM Advice. So we set SM Advice up back in 2024, and the simple idea was that we recognised that networks were producing really great content, but advisors were just too busy to actually use it. So it was a bit of a waste, really, that this content was being produced and not getting out there. So we originally created SM to bridge that gap, ultimately helping firms to show up online without actually adding to their workload. So that was how we started. Since then, we've grown into a trusted social media partner for IFAs and tied advisors across protection, mortgages and wealth right across the UK. So we've really broadened out in terms of our offering. As Michael said, please feel free to ask questions throughout the session. We want it to be interactive as much as we can. You don't just want to listen to me. But ultimately, there will be some time at the end to ask questions if you want to do it then also. So let's just run through the agenda quickly. So we're going to look at the landscape and the change to the landscape, really, in terms of what it means, how consumers are reacting with social media. We'll talk a little bit about AI. Well, then we'll talk about the challenges, potentially why advisors are not using social media. What counts as a financial promotion? It's the million-dollar question. We'll hopefully go through and help you become really clear on that. We'll take some time to look at what good looks like, certainly with regards to financial services, and importantly, how you stay compliant within that, and hopefully keep it interesting as well and engaging. We will touch upon the differences, slight nuances that exist between ARs and directly authorised firms, and then there'll be some sort of helpful hints and tips to hopefully get you started on the back of this. So that's the agenda. In terms of CPD learning objectives, this session does qualify for CPD, so I always like to start with this slide, which hopefully you can just sort of drag and drop into your sort of own CPD portal or form to be able to log that. Just to set expectations early, this isn't about turning you into, you'll be pleased to know, not about turning you into full-blown marketeers. It's about helping you operate safely and effectively in a space that your clients already use and where they already are. So as I said, the consumer landscape is changing. The digital marketing landscape is changing, and how people engage with social media is a really massive part of this. So contrary to popular opinion, social media isn't just about marketing and leads. It's actually about presence, and more people are starting the journey for financial advice online. So if you're not visible where people are starting that journey, then you're going to miss out on potentially having that conversation. And more worryingly, if you're not there, then that space is, and Michael alluded to this at the start, that space is being filled with the non-regulated type of advice, the dreaded finfluencers, which I know the FCA are doing their utmost to crack down on. And there was some, I think there was a case in the news last week with regards to a member of Geordie Shore having their knuckles rapped for doing stuff they shouldn't be within that space. So it's important to note that the FCA are doing what they can, but the more that you can replace them with regulated advice, the better that is for everybody.
I think, sorry, Chris, I'll say just to that point, there was a headline recently that 90% of information that finfluencers put out there is actually misleading. So to your point, there is if it's right for your business, it's almost a duty of care to actually go out there and fill that gap with the correct education and the correct knowledge. And if you think almost 40% of under 35s turn to social media now, be it for mortgage, financial advice, clients are there. They're there and they're waiting to be informed. It's just, I think, as a profession, we need to, where relevant, show up and help them to make sure they've got that right guidance.
Absolutely, Claire, and that really is the point. You know, it's about making sure that your advice is going to be accurate and correct. And if 90%, I didn't actually know that number, that's staggering, but if 90% of what they're giving you is incorrect, then that's hugely misleading from a good customer outcomes point of view. So actually we need to fill that space with accurate information, which doesn't have to be boring, and we'll talk about that later. It's important that we get that message across. And talking about sort of social media and how that's impacting sort of client behavior, I think to my sort of teenage daughters who literally just use TikTok search for all of their information. They don't even use Google. They use TikTok news for all of their updates. And the next generation of financial customers will be using social media almost as a go-to rather than as an additional. So like I said, it's not just Google anymore. It's social platforms and AI tools and LLMs, so like your Claudes and your Chat GPTs, are changing how people search. And it feels like we're in a real shift moment right now. Feels like we're in another Google situation. I know for those of you who remember Google in the early 2000s, those that kind of adopted that early and kind of got the website sort of keywords sort of and links matched up and got their Google My Business page set up. Those people that did that early really reaped the benefits. And now we're in another sort of shift moment now with GEO as opposed to SEO, which is generative engine optimization. This is the birth of AI, LLM tools now managing how clients find their information a little bit differently.
And I'm just jumping in there, Chris. I was at a session last week, and I was speaking to an advisor at the end, and he was saying that he'd got a brand new client come in. They said, "Where did you find me?" And they said, "Oh, it's from Chat GPT." They'd put in, "I'm a business owner. I'm thinking of selling. I need some advice." And obviously, he'd got a website which was kind of optimized for that. It went straight to him. He said, "Oh," and he also said, "Oh, and you had an interesting name." So those are the two dimensions. They got number one, that it was clear what he did, and then the fact that his name stood out. So it was really interesting to see like a tangible example of that kind of flowing through into a new lead, and I think that one went forward.
That's brilliant, and social media plays a huge part of that, because where does ChatGPT and Claude and Copilot, where do they get their information from? Mostly, if you've got particularly long form content on social media, that is gold dust for those search tools, because that immediately is answering a customer question and immediately putting you at the forefront of that search tool. So we'll talk a little bit about that later, but I guess that the point to make here is that the world is shifting a bit in terms of how clients find you. And if we move onto the next slide, I talk to a lot of firms who say this to me, and that's, "I'm lucky because my business relies entirely on client referrals." And that's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. But the shift now is that even if that is the case, what happens next is the client who has been referred to you will look you up. Now, in the old days, that would have been on Google, and they'd have looked you up on Google, and just to reassure you, they'd gone onto your website, made sure that you looked legit, and that they were happy to go to pursue that. The first thing more people are doing now is they're looking you up on social media, and that's the big shift. So where the referrals part hasn't changed, the validation bit has. So now, obviously, if they look you up on Google, it's going to go into the AI LLM search as well, because that's always the top of the Google page now. But also, they'll look you up on social media, and if you haven't posted in 6 months, or if you haven't posted at all, that creates doubt within that client. Are they still active? Are they approachable? So it's really important to just have that in the back of your mind. Client referrals is brilliant, but you still will need social media to help validate who you are.
And it's really important for that consistency, because social media, your website, an email you send out, they're all trust signals. And going back to your point, Chris, if the website's out of date, or the logo looks slightly different on your Facebook profile as it does on your website, that all can, to a consumer, put doubt in their mind. So when you're thinking about social media, just think about all the touch points that a client or a prospect could find you. and just make sure there's a little bit of consistency across there, because from a brand perspective, that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point. It should all look and feel the same. And there should be an alignment across all of them. So yeah, brilliant point. So let's touch upon, I guess, the challenge that you all face as advisors, and I guess the reasons why you potentially wouldn't post. And in a recent survey completed by the Amy Viewpoint, it showed that 51% of advisors in the UK are not active on social media, which that came out sort of towards the end of last year, and that was staggering to me. Like literally over half of the UK financial advisors are not posting from a business point of view on social media. And from the advisors that I speak to, the reasons for this generally fall into two categories. The first one being, I really want to post, but I'm scared to get it wrong and potentially breaching financial regs. And the second one being, I really want to post, but I just don't have the time. Could always be a combination of the two, but they're the broader kind of camps that advisors fall into. Hopefully, the fact that you're on this call today or watching it on the catch up means that you're keen to increase that 49% and want to be posting on social media. And hopefully with the right support, we can get you there posting consistently and safely. So I guess why this also matters under consumer duty, social media isn't, as I said, it's not just marketing and leads. Social media impacts consumer understanding. So, clear, accessible information. Social media impacts consumer support aspects. So making sure that we are meeting clients where they are, which is increasingly on social media. And obviously, social media impacts, hopefully, better customer outcomes, better informed decisions. Going back to that whole point about the influencers giving 90% of incorrect information, the more we can be giving correct information on social media from a consumer duty point of view is a much better outcome for that client or potential client.
Yeah, and I think on the consumer understanding point of view, it's not just providing information, it's actually doing it in a way that helps consumers understand it. And social media can be a really, really powerful tool to do that. And I think, doing nothing can be a risk. It absolutely can. If it's right for your business and it's right for the market that you're targeting, doing nothing can become a commercial risk, because as more people turn to social media, if you're not there, but all of your competitors are there, you're losing out straight away. So there can be that commercial element, but obviously if it's right for your business.
Yeah, and I'd say from my perspective, obviously there's a real focus under the duty about thinking in terms of how you communicate with your prospective and existing customers, and then within that, what you communicate to them. And I think, firms think long and hard about this, and there's no issues, I don't think, with that being through the kind of more traditional communication channels, the kind of personal communications, whether that's by letter, email, client portals, and so on and so forth. I don't think this changes any of that. But like we're saying, in addition to that, there may be other, helpful interactions that you can have using social media. I suppose particularly for those where you're looking to kind of stay in contact with customers and kind of, jog their memories about, things that they should be considering. They might not check their email as frequently as they check their social media profile. So with all of these things, I think it's just a matter of thinking through, where and how and what.
Absolutely. And that's a really good point, Michael. It's a really great way of not just potentially getting in front of new clients, but it's keeping your existing clients engaged. And particularly at the moment, when you think about all of what's going on in the market, it's a really great way to reassure customers that you're there for them without having to do necessarily an email newsletter, or, like you said, consumers are checking their social probably a lot more than they're checking their email. So it's a really great way of staying front of mind. Good stuff. So what is a financial promotion? It's $1 million question. And let's start trying to break this down a bit. But if you look at the FCA definition, a financial promotion is any communication that invites or induces someone to engage in a financial services activity. That's quite a broad definition. And there's a common myth, I suppose, that financial promotions are these polished, glossy ads you can kind of big budget and compliance teams hovering nearby. I guess in reality, the net is cast much wider. And so it's also kind of worth pointing out here that every network, if you're part of a network, has a slightly different nuanced definition of what is a financial promotion. So as a first port of call, I would really encourage you, if you're part of a network, to look at your own network's definition of a financial promotion as your sort of first starting point.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Chris. And I think become really good friends with the compliance teams as well, and just understand their expectations, because they're, effectively a comment could actually be a financial promotion if you are engaging in a conversation that could be seen that you're actually inducing, advice or giving advice. So just be very aware of that. So become best friends. Don't see compliance as people that are trying to stop you doing business. See them as actually working together as a partner and working out where those parameters sit.
Absolutely. And I know from the firms that I speak to, often they get really frustrated with the compliance team because they feel like they're almost putting blockers in the way because they're trying to, but actually they're not. They're actually, their whole remit is there to keep you and your business safe, and make sure that you're applying the rules correctly. But actually they do just want to help. Most of the ones that I speak to, that they absolutely want to help you. And ideally they want to approve everything because it makes their job a bit easier. But it's just, it's really important that you become best friends. I love that, because it ultimately build that relationship, and it will become a much easier process to get stuff approved generally. So what is a financial promotion? If your content gently steers someone, and that could be gently, like Claire said, even with a comment, towards taking financial action, it likely is going to fall into a financial promotion. That's the key thing, really, a call to action. And that's the kind of terminology we use. But what is a call to action? Traditionally, it would be, oh, call me, because that's a call to action. But a call to action can be a lot more nuanced, as in just putting your phone number, as we've said on the slide there, can be a call to action, or an email address can be a call to action, because you're implying, here's my contact details, get in touch. In some networks, I've found that even just putting a hashtag, like hashtag financial advice, can become, you're effectively turning that into an inducement. So it's just be really careful about, certainly about the use of phone numbers, emails, and hashtags. I'm not saying don't use them, because obviously you might want to get your content approved anyway. But if you're trying to create a post that is purely not a financial promotion, just be very, very aware of that.
Sorry, Chris, I was going to say it's interesting on hashtags. I've seen this more and more now, because hashtags are there to make your content discoverable. Without going into the deepest, darkest technical elements of social media, that is why a hashtag is there. So there'll be people that will just be searching constantly for certain hashtags. So the financial planning, financial advice, mortgage advice, they're really big ones. Like you say, I can see that starting to become more of a focus potentially as social media is used more.
And I would, I would almost say now keywords are more important than hashtags in terms of search. So whilst we've always gotten used to doing hashtags as kind of a matter of course, the algorithms are actually using keywords more than they are hashtags. And I think, I've read some articles that hashtags, you don't even need to use them at all. And I'd still probably always do, because I just think it's better to have them than not. But I guess don't get hung up on having to have all the hashtags to get searched, because I think as long as your content has really important keywords in there, and we can talk about that later, then your content should be found. So let's rather than look at what is a financial promotion, sometimes it's easier to look at what isn't a financial promotion, because it starts to make it feel a bit clearer. And this is important to understand, because it kind of gives you the ability to act quicker when you want to potentially post stuff. So pure education, like what is income protection, pure sort of information, education, factual content is not deemed a financial promotion. General awareness, such as why having a will matters, something like that. Brand building without any call to action. So that could just be content about your business and your firm and what you're doing on a sort of day-to-day basis, or just building, your own particular brand and the people within that. That's not necessarily a financial promotion. However, and just to be sort of the bearer of, not sort of the doom monger in this, but actually a non-financial promotion can easily quickly become a financial promotion if you start adding things like telephone numbers and email addresses and things like that. So don't just think because it's purely educational, I'm fine. You can very quickly move into the financial promotion arena by amending. And I would also add to that pre-approved content, because pre-approved content from your network is brilliant, because obviously it's been approved. It's ready to post. It's absolutely great. But you can, by adding a phone number into that pre-approved content, you've then turned it into a financial promotion, and it would need to go through the approvals process.
Can I jump in there? Maybe we've covered this, maybe we haven't, but we've had a comment in from Paul Claire, who said, surely encouragement to seek advice is not a promotion. A promotion is about buying or selling a regulated product. So can we cover that one off here?
I can completely see the point. Paul, is it Paul? Paul's point. Yeah. Because, but I think it comes down to networks' interpretations of the rules, and in a lot of networks that I speak to, simply talking about financial advice and saying you're giving advice, they've interpreted financial advice as giving advice, which turns it into a financial promotion. It does feel a bit sort of nuanced and over the top, but I think it's just better to be, in that case, don't use the hashtag financial mortgage advice or financial advice, because it's not needed. Because what you're doing, you already have to have sort of faith and trust in the content that you're providing. Don't necessarily don't put it in there. You don't need it, is my advice. My advice there, it's a financial promotion now.
Yeah, I'd agree, and I think, there's an argument that you say about having that call to action about, contact us for this, or if you would like to discuss protection, we're here. A lot of networks do see that as a financial promotion, because effectively you're inviting someone. So if somebody then picks up the phone straight away, calls you, and then it goes on to getting protection with you, well, effectively you can track that back. I think that's the other thing with social media, is you can actually track it back. You can have the insights, you can have that data now. So, it's always better. And especially if you're DA, so if you're doing all this yourself, just err on the side of caution, because it's much better to do that and just take a little bit of extra time to approve it as a FinProm than it is to, unfortunately, fall foul of it and then something else happens down the line.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, that investment activity covers both products and services, and obviously advice is a service. So subject to all the other things that we said, I think that's the way to approach it.
Great stuff. So let's look at, so we talked about what is and isn't a financial promotion. Let's kind of touch upon what good content looks like. And to do this, I wanted to split it into two parts. So we'll look at content and platforms, because there's literally no point producing great content if it's in the wrong place. You're essentially wasting your time. So we'll talk a bit about that. Before we even start posting, though, it's really important to just take a moment to really think about your business. And I'd really encourage all of you to do this little exercise, not now, but after the webinar. Take a blank piece of paper and write down 5 things that make you really good at your job, the things that make you different, and why potentially clients would come to you. And on that same piece of paper, flip it over, and on the other side, write down 5 interesting facts about you that your clients might not know about you. And if you can't think of 5, then you're not doing it right. But yeah, just have that bit of paper and just really take the time, because, and we'll kind of talk about why later, but actually that should form the basis of what you post about. It's really important to be authentic when you're talking about social media and building your brand online. So it has to represent you and what you're about, and that's what makes you special, is that you're different. So I'd really encourage you to just take 5 minutes to do that little exercise at some point, after the webinar, and then just have that to hand when you're creating posts. So what good social media looks like in 2026? Good content is simple. It doesn't need to be full of stuff. It doesn't need to be saying as too much. The message needs to be really simple, really clear, and no jargon, no sales pitches, because immediately that is It's immediate turn off. Good content is consistent, so it's really important to be posting consistently. If you're kind of sort of inconsistent, you're posting every now and again, the algorithms don't know what's going on. Your clients get really used to seeing content on a Tuesday and a Thursday, for example, and therefore the algorithms get really used to seeing content on a Tuesday and a Thursday. It just means your posts will generally do better. Social media needs to be engaging. Obviously, you want to try and encourage somebody to stop scrolling. That's the real big challenge with social media. There's so much, it's so immersive. You want people to just suddenly stop and look and read and maybe at least acknowledge and take action. We talked about being authentic. This is really important because it has to represent you. Don't look at what everyone else is doing and think, I really need to do that. It has to just be authentic to you, and that's absolutely fine, which is why video content is always better than any other content, because it's actually you talking to the camera. And obviously it needs to be compliant, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But before you post anything, I'd encourage you to stop and think and ask yourself a couple of questions. Who am I trying to reach? What are those people worried about? And what questions are they asking me every single week? The best content genuinely you'll ever create is just answering those questions. You know, an example on the left, this is what estate agents look for. If you're answering a question that a client has asked you this week, already you can guarantee other clients will be thinking that, and they'll want to know the answer to that question, and you'll be already doing them a favor and immediately putting yourself up there in terms of their estimation. Sometimes it means being bold. Sometimes it means just simplifying something complex, but it always starts with understanding your audience.
And I think as well, don't be afraid to pepper your sort of posts with things about your brand and about your values. It's very easy to get in your own head sometimes and just think, oh, I'm posting that again, people are going to find it boring. The reality is, because of algorithms, I mean, LinkedIn at the moment can serve content 3 weeks after you've posted, but the lifespan of a post is really short. So the reality is, if you post, you know, on a monthly basis about who you are, what you stand for, which again goes to those trust signals, the likelihood is half your audience haven't seen that first post, but they can now see it. So try and sort of remove yourself from any of that slight fear of, I'm just going to sound boring, because you're not. You're absolutely not. And if people don't want to see it, they have the choice to scroll past it.
And that's absolutely true. And like you said, if they probably haven't seen it, but even if they have, it's okay, because you're just reminding them. So yeah, and it's not like you're posting the same thing every day, or every half an hour, and eventually that they might get annoyed with that. But like you said, a week later is absolutely fine, because it's, you know, it's already the lifespan of that post is probably gone. So don't be scared to repurpose, to reuse, because it will. Because often I get the question, I'm going to run out of stuff to post. Just, you can repurpose, and you can slightly change a post just to make it slightly different, but you can just post the same thing 3 months later or a month later or whatever. It's absolutely fine. A quick top tip here: don't tell people what you do. They're not interested. Just show them how you can help. So I'm sure they are interested, but just, it's not about you, it's about what you can do for them. I think is really important. Celebrate success. So if you've got client testimonials, client reviews, or if you're just celebrating something really important, a key milestone in your business, those are the most engaging posts. They get the most likes, because it's just, and actually sometimes we can get a bit too, I think as Claire said, don't get sort of too into yourself in terms of, I don't want to be blowing my own trumpet. That's okay. Like, it's important to celebrate success, because it's a trust builder, it's a trust indicator, and particularly if you know, client referrals are looking for you, and they see you've got another happy 5-star Google review, it just validates who you are and what you're about. So those things are massive. Yeah.
And I think as well, don't be afraid to put your own photos up there, which I've been there. It could be the most cringing thing. And I tried to avoid corporate photographs through most of my career as much as I could. But it does make a difference, because as Chris said, it's that authenticity. People want to know who they're buying from. They want to know you exist. You know, in a world where there is so much AI generated content now, where it can be hard to know what's true and what isn't, people just want to know who, when, you know, they pick up the phone, who are they going to be speaking to? So don't be scared of doing it. I know it can feel cringing, but it is important.
Yeah, you just have to get over that. It is slightly cringing, but actually, yeah, you're so right to pick on that point with regards to AI, because seeing real humans is actually so much more so much more valued in terms of content and engagement. So yeah, I mean, that's absolutely brilliant. If you can post content of what you're doing in a day at work is great, but also, you know, if you watch your son or daughter play football at the weekend and you're just sat at the sidelines and it's, you know, it's a cold November day or something, and you just want to create a post, you're creating something that people can relate to, because they're also probably doing that as well. So it just gives a little bit about you and who you are. Going back to that bit of paper I said earlier on, those 5 things that your clients might not know about you, those are the sort of things you can also post about.
Yeah, and also, sorry, just to interrupt, that goes back to having the conversations with your compliance teams as well. You know, if you're part of a network, just talk to them and say, okay, for an example, I'm there on a Sunday watching my son play football. If I do a post and it's this content, this type of content, am I okay or am I not? Because obviously with the approval process, it can reduce that spontaneity.
Absolutely.
So just work with them and work out where your boundaries are. So what can you do?
And Chris, I know you mentioned about the importance of a kind of regular presence, I suppose, as a salty old kind of compliance focused consultant. I suppose there's a little bit, it's not content at any cost, is it? So I think it's important, as we said, to be authentic. It's important to be talking to the questions that our clients or prospective clients want answered. But occasionally you see those posts, you know, how is financial advice like, I don't know, like cheese or something, and they've got kind of AI smacking all over them. It's not content at any cost, is it?
No, genuinely, and I think people are very aware of what AI content looks like now, I think, and that's one thing to be mindful of. You know, I think that can actually be almost damaging if you're creating content that somebody's going, you clearly haven't written that. Then yeah, and then that comes back absolutely to authenticity. So I would really encourage you to write content. Like, you can use AI tools to proofread stuff that you've written. That's really good. You can use AI tools to get ideas of content, but if you're going to write something, make sure it's written in your words, in your language, and it looks like it's written by a human as well, because I think that can be an immediate turn-off. And in terms of consistency, you know, it doesn't need to be every day. Absolutely doesn't need to be every day. If you're wanting to go viral, you know, maybe, but I don't think you do. I just think, you know, a couple of times a week is great, or once a week, as long as it's consistent. So if you say I'm going to post once a week, do it once a week. Ideally, probably twice a week is good, because it gives you an idea and allows you to do a bit of variety in there. But it doesn't need to be every day. Okay. So in terms specifically about financial services, we've already sort of talked.
Sorry,
okay.
to cut you off. So Jessica Fitzsimmons has asked about kind of generic brand building posts and whether they need caveats and compliance approval. I suppose it's this distinction, isn't there, between can we cover that off now?
Yeah, I guess my answer would be to that, if you're not sure, just ask. Like, it's better to be safe, you know. It's because brand building could mean a whole different, loads of different types of things, couldn't it? Mm-hmm. But ultimately, if I think you just need to think about what you're actually, what content you're creating, and then like Claire said, you know, run it by your financial promotions team and say, I'm hoping to do this. Is this fine? And they'll either say yes, that's fine, or annoyingly they might say, can you put it through and we'll check it, do it that way, which some do. But yeah, Claire, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Chris. I think just have those sort of sensible conversations with them, and I think you will find that it will vary. It will vary probably per group and network. You know, meet the team. I've seen some posts, if you are posting about somebody who isn't regulated for this or isn't authorized to give advice, then you can almost get away sometimes with not having that. But if you're talking about someone who can, then all of a sudden the disclosure at the bottom does appear. So I think it is just very dependent. You know, brand building, say these are our values, admittedly that might not need it. If you're saying we're financial planners and we do this, that effectively is a brand post. But yes, I would imagine that would need disclosure. As with all these things, just I would always advise to err on the side of caution.
Okay, thank you. So specifically, let's look at financial services and just sort of drill down into this a little bit more. The best posts, like I said, are answering the questions that your clients are thinking. You know, there's some examples there. Should I stop investing while markets feel uncertain? That's quite a pertinent one right now. Real life client stories and 5-star Google reviews. We talked about this. This is user generated content, and this is massive in 2026. This is trust validation. This is showing people that you're looking after lots of people and you're really good at what you do. So that's absolutely brilliant. They reinforce your brand, and they give clients the reassurance messages, future clients reassurance messages without you having to do it. So UGC, user generated content, is absolutely brilliant. We talked a bit about video content. That works probably the most impactful as a medium. I think I read somewhere recently that a video blog content is 53 times more engaging than just words, which I don't know how they managed to get that number, but that's massive. So if you can create content with a video, ideally if you're brave enough to go on video and do something like that, that will be absolutely massive in terms of engagement. Again, just be mindful, if it constitutes a financial promotion, you will need to get the script pre-approved by your financial promotions team and have the various caveats on there that you need. But that shouldn't stop you from doing it. You can just create a couple of scripts, get them approved, and then just do a walk and talk or whatever you want to do. And the video content should be authentic to you. So if you're happy, just if you do something every day, you go and walk the dog, you could just have a camera filming you walking and talking, if that's authentically you. It doesn't have to be set up with a fancy light, set it up at your desk, or professional. It could just be in an environment that you're comfortable. And I would just say, before we move on, about just a quick tip on video. When you're recording video, don't record it like you're planning to post it. Just record it like you're talking to a camera, or you're talking to your phone. You're just creating a voice memo, something like that, because you could create 100 videos and not post any of them. And hopefully that will start to get you more comfortable and used to almost performing in front of the camera. If you start sitting down and posting a video, filming a video as if you are going to be posting it, it creates that whole different amount of pressure that stops you from being yourself and maybe looks a little bit wooden, but also that's also okay. Like, people don't want polished, they just want to see you. So if it does look a bit wooden, that's also okay, I would say.
And I think always try and use plain English. And actually, going back to Chris's point about AI, one of the best tips of how to use AI effectively from a marketing perspective is when you write a post, put it in and ask them to comment from a plain English point of view. I think we all know how many acronyms in financial services as a profession. Put yourself in the viewpoint of, if you were your friend is looking at this, or a loved one, or whoever it might be, and say, well, would they get that? Take yourself out of the lens of a practitioner and put yourself into a consumer. And that's really important, because again, that helps with that trust signals. No one wants to feel that they're not clever enough to understand something, and that can create a lot of overwhelm. So clarity is just really key.
Yeah, and like you said, use AI for that, but also test it with friends, family members, whatever. Say, does this make sense? If you want, because I think it's really important to take yourself out of that and go, I know what it means, but does the end consumer potentially know what it means? So that's a really great point. One last point to make on this slide, and before we move on, about platforms is just don't worry so much, I would say, if you don't get so many likes and shares if you start posting. Financial services content, just isn't that likable and shareable. Not likable as in likable, but as in doesn't get as many, it doesn't engage people enough. Like they'll engage with it, but they don't always want to click the button to say like or put the heart on it or whatever, or share it. So don't get so hung up and worried about that. The fact that you're there, you will be getting engagement, and often you can see there's various different sort of dashboards on all the social media platforms now where you can see the engagement of your posts, and an engagement could be a client just lingers on it, that will be registered. So don't worry if you're not getting so many likes or shares, but do check out the dashboards for the engagement, because you'll start to see which posts are working, which posts aren't working, and maybe you can sort of tweak it to do more of the ones that are.
Chris, very quickly on that one, I think Lorraine in the comments raised a point earlier about the reach of posts that aren't on part of kind of paid for advertising. You know, I think it's suggesting the kind of impact that has on their seeability. I suppose any reflections on how, I suppose in the absence of paying for advertising, you can best amplify your reach?
The best way to amplify your reach is doing all the things we just said, but the most important thing is to be consistent, and that means consistent with the times you post, but also consistent with the keywords and the hashtags if you're using them, because that's when, if you start to be consistent with those, that's when the algorithms start to go, oh, I know what they do now, and I get this, so I can start to share this to people that I know might want to see it. So consistency is absolutely the key if you want to increase your reach on social media. Obviously, it needs to be engaging as well, because the more you can get people to linger on your post, and I think it's 2 seconds, I think is the time frame, then the algorithms go, oh, someone liked that post, they stayed on that post, so therefore I am going to start sending that out to other people. So it's those 2 things, engagement and consistency, will absolutely is the best way to improve your reach. Whilst we might as well touch upon paid ads and sort of boosting as well while we're here, I wouldn't boost your posts, is my honest answer to that. Like, you will get more engagement, but it's the wrong people. It's just a way of getting it to anybody, but not necessarily the right people. So it might be good for your ego, but I don't think it will necessarily be good for your business. So I just wouldn't encourage boosting posts. Paid ads, I think that there is kind of a place for paid ads. I wouldn't completely disregard it. My advice on sort of paid ads on the social platforms is, if you've got a particular targeted ad, as in a particular targeted niche client or a niche product or a particular specific angle, then there is an opportunity there to do paid ads and test and see how you get on with that. But I would just, do it. Make sure if you are going to try that, do it for at least a month, because sometimes it takes a while for the algorithm again to warm up. But just try it for sort of an amount you can afford. Do it for a month and see if you can get an impact. But so I wouldn't automatically say you don't need to do paid ads. It might be right for the right scenario, but I would encourage you. Just presence is way more important right now on social media. So if you're doing it because you want leads, then I completely understand it. But don't just do a blanket approach. Make sure you're on the right platform with the right content, and then potentially try it for a month. And while we're on, so it kind of brings us onto platforms, which is sort of good timing. It's important when you're creating content that you post where your clients are, or where you want your future clients are. And so we put some sort of stats on here in terms of the sort of age ranges. And this is sort of the average age range and demographic for all the different platforms. Obviously there are outliers, but in the main, this is kind of the age ranges, and they are constantly always changing as well. But kind of as we stand at the moment, or I say constantly, it's just TikTok's going a bit older. The rest are kind of static. But we look at these one by one. So Facebook, I lovingly refer to as the old lady of social media, because she's been around a while. And I still think there's a place for Facebook, but it's definitely harder to get reach. And partly because of the way the algorithms work. You all notice now when you go on your own Facebook, you very rarely see stuff for people you follow, you see mostly content that Facebook thinks you want to see. So yeah, that can be a bit of a challenge, but it still works. It's just harder to break through. Instagram is generally younger clients, great for sort of first time buyers, protection clients, that sort of thing. Interestingly, when you look at kind of the split sort of between sort of male and female, it's predominantly female orientated in terms of the users, 55 to 45% split. So also interestingly on Instagram, it's we spend more time on Instagram on a daily basis in the UK than anywhere else in the world. So we've really taken Instagram to our hearts in the UK. So it's worth kind of leveraging that, and I'd encourage you to use that if that's where your clients are. LinkedIn is really important, I'd say, right now, particularly with kind of the demise of X. It's kind of the predominantly platform for sort of social commentary. Obviously, it's a B2B platform, so it's great from a business point of view to be there. But yeah, it's great at introducing relationships, but more importantly, LinkedIn is great for long form content, which is picked up by the AI search tools. So again, if you want to boost your visibility on ChatGPT and whatever, creating content on LinkedIn that is answering questions that customers have is a great way of putting you higher up in terms of the rankings for LinkedIn. Oh, sorry, for client search. TikTok isn't just client dance routines. Dance routines. It's definitely for the younger generation. And as I said earlier, it's where my daughters get their news and their search things and everything. But it is becoming slightly more important. And the age range is getting older every day. The good thing about TikTok is there's a lot more watchers than content creators, particularly in financial services. So again, if you are brave enough to create content on LinkedIn, you get a lot more bang for your buck right now because there's less people on there doing it. So you can almost become, a pioneer in that respect. Another final point on TikTok before we move on, they're kind of making a bit of a move now to become a bit more of a serious long form content player. So as a top tip here, if you create a video that's a minute and 1 second, just over a minute long, TikTok is going to put that higher up in terms of the algorithm because that's what the sort of content it wants to be seen as creating. So top tip there, no longer just really short form videos on TikTok. They do work, but if you want to create some more long form content, you're going to get, again, pushed up the algorithm.
I think as well with all of these platforms, as it is really important to post, it's also really important to engage. So if you're posting and somebody is replying a comment, keep that conversation going. Also on the other side, it's important to do that from a moderation. You don't want, if somebody might put a negative comment, you want to control that narrative. You want to control how you respond to that person, usually privately, I would say. Don't let something get out of control and let somebody else take that narrative from you. And for LinkedIn, if you do have a business profile on LinkedIn, follow other companies, engage with them, because as Chris said, from an introducer perspective and those professional connections, it's absolutely fantastic. So just be seen to be bothered enough that you bother about their content, because that way you can expect them to hopefully then look at yours and follow you back.
Yeah, absolutely. And, social media is not a broadcast tool. It's meant to be a conversation. So the more you do it, the more you interact with your clients, the more you interact with other people. And I would just encourage 10 minutes a day of just doing 10 things on social media. 10 minutes a day, 10 things, because the more you do that, and that could be a like, a share, a comment, a follow, the algorithm goes, oh, you're using social media as it's meant to be used, and I will reward you by boosting your posts. So it does all help. Very conscious of time, so we'll move on to compliance. And obviously it's really important that your posts are compliant, absolutely. And we'll look at the definition of what that means. Clear, fair, and not misleading. You'll have heard this all the time, and that's the FCA principle. And that just really means plain English. Fair means make sure that it's balanced and you're not just sharing the good, you've also got to share the bad potentially. And not misleading is obvious. You can't exaggerate or just be selective in the data that you quote. A few pitfalls to avoid and potentially alternatives to use instead. Don't say free when commission is involved, consider saying no obligation or something like that. In terms of just be wary of using independent or best. I would almost say don't use best unless you can absolutely back it up. If you're going to use, if you're a member of a network and you're on panel, don't say, that you've got. Don't say whole of market if you're not. Obviously, just say we work with a carefully selected panel of lenders to find a solution that meets your circumstances. Avoid using guarantees or certainty. And for that, I would just say, if read your post, and if it says your product will do this, just change will to could. And that's a simple way to navigate that. Risk warnings, obviously really important, and we'll cover that off in a minute. But yeah, just make sure that you're balanced so that the risks are obviously and the benefits are obviously have equal page measure. And yeah, just make sure that you're transparent. And if in doubt, as I said, check with your compliance team.
And I think, just jumping in here, it'd be fair to say that there's been some industry practice that has developed, I suppose, within the kind of echo chamber of regulation, which is not always particularly helpful in here. And the FCA recently has been calling out some kind of mistruths and misperceptions around investment risk warnings. And there's quite a useful page, and I will post the link in the comments, with some of these myths and a view from the regulator on what you can do instead. So for the example, you don't have to say capital at risk, and an encouragement to have that more balanced kind of content where you talk about the benefits and the risks as part of like your actual content, as opposed from having all of the great things up front and then having the risks down at the bottom in kind of small grayed out font. I think there's a kind of real desire to have a more kind of adult conversation. It should be balanced. It's this great stuff, but it's got these potential pitfalls. So as long as you can navigate them, yada yada yada. And I'll put that in the chat so people can have.
Yeah, that's a great link. So I'd urge you all to read that. It's really helpful. And we talked about risk warnings just very briefly. You don't need to know all of them. You just need to know when to apply them. You don't need to know them off by heart. You just need to know, like I said, at what point you're mentioning something, when that risk warning will be needed. I'd really encourage you, if you're part of a network, because the risk warnings do change slightly depending on which network you're with. So make sure that you've got a list of the risk warnings and when to apply them. They're really helpful and usually have checklists and stuff. In terms of where to put the risk warnings, if it's a carousel, it should be on every page, not just at the end. If it's on a video, again, it should stay consistently across the video, doesn't not just appear at the end. And if it's a static post, it should just be somewhere that's readable and not just hidden right at the bottom. It doesn't have to be massively in your face, but it has to be readable. You can't hide it. So that's really important. There is a safe posting checklist which I've created, particularly useful, I think, if you're DA, because obviously if you're with a network, you're going to have your own version of this. But if you're DA and think you need a checklist to help you, we'll put a link in the chat with that. There'll also be a link on the slides. But that's a really good, helpful, useful starting point in terms of, am I using the risk warnings? Does the post need to be approved from a financial promotion point of view? And just giving you a quick run through of the important points to note. So I'd urge you to click on that if you want to see that. Just very quickly, we'll look at the slight differences between sort of appointed rep versus directly authorised. Obviously, if you're an appointed rep, your approval is going to be done via the network, which is great, and obviously be their friend. And as we've talked about, I guess the important point here is the oversight and responsibility of what you post still sits with you. So it's still your responsibility. And so with that in mind, it's probably, we talked about record keeping under DA, but I would also urge, if you're an appointed rep, you also keep a very, it can be quite rudimentary, but you keep a record of what you post, a very basic spreadsheet of the dates, the approval date, the approval reference, that sort of thing. It's important that you maintain those records for your own benefit. And yeah, just obviously if you're a DA as well, it's important that you are aware of what other people in your firm are posting, not just what you're posting. So almost a greater need there for internal controls. Do a kind of spot check of advisors in your business to make sure that you're happy that what they're posting links in with your brand and all looks and feels the same. Ideally, you can sort of create content that everyone can use, but just be mindful of that as well. Claire, did you want to add anything else?
I'm going to jump in. I think we need to sum up now. We've covered a lot, and I think we've covered quite a lot of the questions as we go. So hopefully the audience will appreciate that. What are our last? Got 20 seconds, Claire. And then we'll come back to you, Chris. What are the key takeaways from this?
I think authenticity is absolutely key in everything you do. If you're using AI, use it positively. Don't let it take your voice. It can never replace you as a human in your business. The other thing I would say is mindset around social media. It can be very, very easy to get a bit despondent. It can be very easy for imposter syndrome to kick in because you're thinking, why am I not posting that? Why did I not think about that? Try and stay true to your business values, your business model, and who you want to be targeting to, and just see it as a positive tool for you to communicate to people and curate your own profiles. Make sure that the content you're seeing on a daily basis and the people are following are going to help you with that mindset and make it feel in a positive place that you can get inspiration from. So just always be wary about that, because I've done a lot of mentoring and I've seen people in a real mess, to be honest, about it, because they're getting upset about it. Don't. Just try and see it as a positive place for your business.
Thanks, Claire. And then Chris.
Yeah, I love that. All I'm going to share is this, which is there's a QR code on the screen that you can scan if you want a little bit more information, or if you just want a little bit more guidance and support on posting. It covers a little bit of what we've talked about today, but it also talks about the kind of common mistakes advisors make, and hopefully some tips on how to be create more engaging posts. So yeah, if you click on that link and download the social media guide, that will also help you. I absolutely love what Claire said there. Don't be despondent if you don't get immediate likes. Social media can take a bit of time to gather momentum, but it's just better to be there than not, particularly for all the reasons that we talked about at the start.
Brilliant. Well, thank you both. I think we're also going to share contact details of Claire and Chris, which, although they are up on the screen, and I'm sure we'll look to share those as well. So that was an action-packed session. I thought we'd get to the end with loads of time to spare, but I think with all of our helpful additions and some of the questions we got in, thank you so much for adding those in. We really appreciate the interactive nature of it. And what I'm going to take away is that this is a topic that we should return to, because I think we've covered some of the key points here. There's obviously a few areas where people are keen for some maybe more detailed content, and perhaps that's something we'll look to return to later in the year. So thank you, everyone. Really appreciate that. As ever, if you've got other topics that you'd like us to cover, do please reach out and let us know. And other than that, just to say thank you all again and have a great day, and see you again soon. Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Chris. Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks all.
Bye.